start, you can start.
Yeah, we are live now.
Yeah, okay.
So a very good evening to all watching us on YouTube. And today, the most awaited program of ours of the week, Power of Self. This particular thing, when we say power of self, it has so much power in itself. And in these webinars, we have discussed a lot in detail with Mr. Surya Vijay Shastri Kotamari sir about different powers that a person have and can have if they uh, deliberately practice that and imbibe things in themselves. So today also we are going to going to talk on one of such power of self, that is power of observing. And I think this is something very, very important, because in order to react, in order to talk, in order to do something, it is very important to observe things, observe persons, observe situations, and observe the environment which is prevailing around us. So with this, a very good evening once again, good morning to other parts of the world, good afternoon as well. And ICSI is back with our NRIs for Indian Education and Skills program, Power of Self, and today we are going to discuss about power of observing. Before that, I just move on with few slides of ours. So ICSI is going to tell all the people, those who are watching, some days are very, very important, and we try to bring those important days into your consideration to increase your knowledge as well, and to refer these days and the importance of these days that we have. And one such day that we have today is World Cancer Day. Every year on 4th February, World Cancer Day is observed globally, and WHO has declared this day, and it gives the awareness to the people about the disease and how to cure it. And the theme for this year for World Cancer Day is closing the care gap. Now, why this theme has been put in this time is that it has been found with the researchers that there is a huge gap of treatment for cancer patients in developed nations and the developing nations. So WHO, along with different governments of the world, they are trying to cover this gap, and they are trying to provide services to all patients, all the cancer patients equally, and with the quality care. So this is the theme, closing the care gap. Along with this, there is also one important day today, that is International Day of Human Paternity. We all are human beings, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. Though boundaries have separated us, we are separated in forms of rajyas, the states, the districts, the countries, but we should be one with our heart, because ultimately we are human beings and we all have same senses, same body structures, and we should have a good feeling, humanly feeling, friendly feeling, brothers, sisters feeling for each other. So this day signifies this International Day of Human Paternity. This we want to bring, and we believe in Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam because we salute our brothers and sisters, those who are spreaded across the world and are working hard in their respective fields, and they are taking care of themselves, and they are taking care of their loved ones and their nation, their people as well. So we salute all NRIs, those who are spreaded across the globe. Last week, we covered the topic power of respect, and we have taken many good points out of that. And now moving from power of respect, we are going towards power of observing. And these all series that we are doing, we are capturing ultimate aim. Our action plan is education, skills, with employment and entrepreneurship to make India, Indian people, entire human fraternity, Atmanirbhar. And after this program at 8 p.m., since we are covering now post-budget analysis with education, so in this particular series, this is our fourth program today, that is education in nation building. And as Fridays are dedicated for women leadership, so we are bringing a panel of 5 absolutely intellectual and great visionary educationists from different parts of India. Those who are going to speak on education in nation building, Indian Union Budget 2022. So whatsoever human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And with this, I would straight away go to my guest for this evening, Shri Surya Vijay Shastri Kotamari sir. And we are very, very thankful to him that he is here exactly at 7 a.m. This is 7 a.m. in Canada, and he is prepared with his topic, with everything, and he's as fresh as anybody can be at 7 a.m. So we are very grateful to you that you are here, and we want to listen now from you, the power of observing.
Namaskar. Thank you, Chatraji, for the introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the world, and good evening to people in India. I'm very glad that today there are 2 important days. One is the Cancer Day, and really clearing the clear gap, closing the clear gap is definitely an important aspect of cancer. There is a huge gap, and definitely it needs to be closed. And people have to do their part. They have to understand what is cancer and how it affects us, and what are the ways that we can try and at least make sure that we do not get into it ourselves. The other thing is the International Day of Fraternity. This is another important day, and as we all have been discussing, like Chitra has said, that we are all bodies, different countries, different districts, different states. I would also say that even though we are so many different in bodies, and different souls, we all are part of one eternal soul, and so that is where we are united, and so we definitely have the power fraternity, and let us celebrate this International Day of Human Fraternity very well today. Coming to our discussion of power of self, I've been trying to bring in various topics on the power of self, because there are many things that we can do ourselves. And today's topic of power of observing is another important aspect. So I would like to start with, what is observation? So observation is the act of observing with one's mind, not just collecting data. It is the process of paying attention to something. And when you observe only as an observer and do not react to what you observe, then you are able to take the right decision based on using the right brain filters. Now, in our mind, we do have some filters, and these brain filters are based on our thoughts, our beliefs, our past experiences, our habits, and these determine the kind of information we allow in our brain. So these we already process the data and filter them based on our filters that we have in our mind. So we should not be having the filters, and we should first observe and understand what it is, and then filter the data that is required. So, and that is why it's very important that when you see something, It is you not only just observe them, but observe them in detail. So in order to get the power of observing, there are certain things which we have to um, uh, create and habituate ourselves, so that that will give us the power of observing. And later on, after the discussion of how to increase your power of observing, I will tell you what is the main purpose of observation. Because observing, as I mentioned earlier, is looking for something in detail and not just seeing something. Seeing something and observing something is different. Observing means observing it very closely and trying to look at the minutest thing of what you are seeing. So, in order to develop the power of observation, the first thing we should have is we should be open to receiving the information. So when you are observing something, you should have an open mind, because if you have a closed mind and you are observing something, then you may not be able to see everything that is required to be seen. So openness of mind is a very important uh, perspective and a requirement of increasing your power of observing. The second um, part of it is you have to channel the observation to a specific thing. When you're observing, you actually come across so many things. So we have to have our focus on a specific object. So we should channel our observation to a specific object and then look in detail on that specific object. That is when we will be really getting the actual details of that specific object. Because while you are observing, there are many things that come, and especially in your mind also, you will be having so many thoughts. If you allow a number of thoughts to come to you, you will not know which thought to pick. So you will have to decide a specific thought and then work on it. Similarly, you have to channel the observation to a specific object. That is another important aspect of increasing your power of observing. Then the third one is be in the present moment and avoid distraction. Now, when you are observing something, your attention has to be in that specific moment. You cannot go and think about it while you are observing. So you have to be in the present moment, and you should not allow any distraction to come in your mind. For instance, when you are driving on a rainy day, um, your winds wipers will be wiping the I'm just saying rain, because in India you have rain, but here we have much more difficulty, because in Canada we also drive during snow. So when the snow comes and you are driving, your wipers are just continuously wiping the snow, and similarly in India it will be wiping the water. But if you concentrate and you start looking at the wipers, then your concentration will be lost and you will not be able to focus on the road. So your focus should be on the road. So in order not to get distracted, you have to understand that you have to be in that moment and you have to observe and focus yourself on a specific thing, and not observe anything that distracts you. So that's another important aspect of increasing your power of observation. Then in addition to that, you also have to use all your senses while you are observing, because there might be some things which the other senses, such as your ears, your nose, and your eyes, in addition to the eyes, might be observing. And so you have to make sure that the observation allows your senses also to take into account. And then you should apply your brain filters properly. As I mentioned in the beginning, when you are observing, you have to see, and because as I said, the brain filters are based on your beliefs, your past thoughts, your previous experiences, and other so many other things. So you should not be using all the filters at one time. You have to see which specific brain filter you have to use in order to observe that and get a proper result out of it. And you should improve your memory or ability to react. This is a very important aspect, because when you are observing, you have to make notes, and you have to make sure that these things that you have observed are put in a memory form. Memory need not necessarily be only in your mind. They can also be noted, jotted, and put at a place where you can actually refer to them at a later time. So when you do all these things, you will be able to get a finer observation. And when you observe very closely like this, then you will be able to see the fine details. Now, what is the importance of observing? Now, it is important for us to know that, because I am using the word the power of observing. These powers, these items that I mentioned that you should do in order to increase your power of observing, is for the main reason that we have to observe everything as a detached observer. Now, in the past, one of the webinars, we have spoken about detachment, and I would like to say that observing and detachment are very closely related, and you have to observe things as a detached observer. When I say a detached observer, then it means that you are seeing what is happening and not attaching to yourself. Um, the reason we should be doing that is, let's say, in a household of three people, if there is somebody who's suffering from a very chronic pain, and there are the other two members who um, look at this person and feel their pain. Now, by feeling their pain, you are giving the other person the comfort that you are with them. But really speaking, you are not giving them any additional relief, because you give them the feeling that you are with them. But the real feeling of being with them is by observing what they have, the type of pain they have, and you can send your blessings to them, and you can uh, give your prayers to them, so that they get relieved. Because the only way you can help someone is by not uh, being with them in pain, because then you are not a detached observer. You are attaching yourself with them, and you will not be able to bring them out of the pain. So you have to be a detached observer. For instance, if three people are walking together from a family, and then one of them falls in the ditch, the other two will not just jump into the ditch. There, they will be observing what has happened, and they will try to bring that person out. That is what I'm trying to actually say, that when someone is pain, the other two have to be observers, as detached observers, and they have to see what is happening and contribute towards that person coming out of the pain or coming out of their difficulty, whatever you would like to call. That can happen only when you are detached, yourself and observing things. So a detached observer is the one which is required. And this detachment allows us as an observer to increase our power. When it comes to the power of self, um, relating to thoughts, let's connect the power of self to the thoughts that are coming. At this point, Chitra, I would like to just stop and see if you have anyone asking any questions or any comments.
Yes,
After
sir.
that, I will
Yes, sir.
continue because I would like to specifically stress on a specific thing as to how, the observing as a detached observer will help us in improving our power of self.
Yes,
Are
sir.
there
So
any
I have
questions?
a few. I have few questions to ask you, and that is
Mhm,
with the audience itself. So one thing is
mhm.
that you have made us understand observing very well. But how can we differentiate observing your observation with listening and observation with seeing? Like we are seeing something, so are we observing, or we are listening something, are we observing? So these are the two things, and the other thing I'll ask later.
Yeah, let me answer one by one so that, at least I did say that when you are observing, one of the power of that is to have all your senses in place. That is, you should be listening and you should be seeing also at the same time. And you should not get distracted by those two. You have to observe what you have listened to. You have to see what you have seen. And then, as a detached observer, you have to assimilate the things that both your senses, that is your eyes and your ears, have taken, and then take a unified decision by not attaching yourself to that particular observation, but seeing the finer details into it and then coming to a decision. That's how you would like. Otherwise, there will be distraction between the two, what you are listening to and what you are seeing, and then you will not be able to take the right decision. So that is why you have to have that power of unification of all the senses while you are observing.
Right, sir. Understood. So that means seeing and listening, they are the part or the component of observation itself.
Yeah, I had mentioned to you that all your you have to keep all your senses together. That is one
Right,
of
sir.
the
And
powers that I did say, that use all your senses. So
right,
use
sir.
all
Right,
your
sir.
senses is that.
Right, sir. So if someone is biased, or if someone is not that thoughtful in his or her action, so how can we come on the accuracy part of observation of him or her?
Okay. You have already said if they are biased or they have not thought about it completely. So, yeah, when you are biased, then your observation is biased, right? Where are you seeing the finer details? So you have fixed your mind on certain things, and then you are looking at it from that angle. So already the bias comes into effect, and you are not seeing the finer details. So bias should never come while you are observing. That's why you have to be a detached observer. I have used the word detached observer because you observe. You do not,
Mhm.
you impartially observe them. Biased observant is partially observing, not as a detached
Mhm.
observer,
So,
right?
sir, can we be a detached observer for ourselves as well?
That's exactly what is the purpose. I was about to, after I said after the questions, I'll continue, but because that question has come up, I'll at least answer partially right now. Um, we have to be a detached observer in everything for ourselves, because and that is where the self-awareness comes. Self-awareness is nothing but observing everything, that being a detached observer. And I was to speak on how you can detach yourself with the thoughts, and I will speak about that. And that is the way you your being a detached observer will help you and increase your self-awareness. So
That
yes, it
is
will.
one thing which is very important to listen to from you, sir. And
Yeah.
is that observation always should have facts behind it? That observation should always be supported by facts, or it is just not being put in the day-to-day life observations.
See, observation is meant for getting the facts, right? So when you observe in detail, you will get more facts, right? I'm not saying that don't get more facts. I'm saying look at everything in detail to the maximum possible extent to get as many facts as you can, but that is only for one object. So when you are observing, or observe one specific object, whether it is object, thought, or anything that you are observing, specifically look at that specific item, thought, object, whatever it is, get the maximum facts out of it, but observe all this as a detached observer. So you have to get facts, and you have to get all the facts, not just few facts, because the all the facts will come when you keep looking and observing more and more in detail.
Right, sir. There's one more question, and I think that you will take with your further when in your sayings. How can I be a good observer and listener? Somebody has asked. So I think
Yeah. Um, Being a good observer and a good listener, right? So these two again are two of the five senses that we have. They are the two sensory organs, and both of all the five sensory organs, in fact, are controlled from our mind. So our mind is the one which directs what to do when you listen something, or when you hear something, or you see something. So you have to have a coordination, and your mind has to decide that. So there has to be a coordination in these two, and they are only two out of the five. In fact, you have to have unison of all the five senses before a proper decision is taken. And that's why self-awareness comes when you have control over all the five senses, and you take the right decision after taking all the five senses into account.
right, sir. There are other questions also. With your permission, should I ask now, or should
No,
we
no,
move
go
ahead
ahead, no
and
problem.
okay,
Yeah, I
okay.
mean,
So
that's fine.
somebody is asking that when we compare the observation of a small child, and if we compare with the observation of a matured person, that is a complete difference. So why is it, and why can't we be like a child even when we are 30 years old or 40 years old or maybe much older? So what is your opinion about it, sir?
Okay. See, that's what boils down to the object that you're looking at. I said, when you look at an object, look at it in detail, and observe it as a detached observer. Now, when you're observing a child, you are trying to see what, as a child, that specific individual will be doing. So your focus should be to look into detail as to, as a child, what you expect that specific child to do. So you are looking for something in detail about a child. When comparing with observing a grown-up person, it is a totally different object. These are two different objects. I said your observation will be based on the object. Now, if you are observing a child first, and then you are going and observing a matured person or a grown-up person, you will then see the detail, you will observe the details in a grown-up person from a different perspective. It all depends on what is the objective of your observing that specific individual. Are you trying to see what are the traits of that person, or what are the and do they have ego, do they have anger? Now these things, if you are looking at those factors, if you are trying to see, does a child have ego, does a child have anger, does a child have good listening skills, if you are trying to look at those two and compare, then your observation will make sense, because you are trying to see, does a child have ego? No. Does a matured person, will he have an ego? Or yes, it might have. Most of the time everyone has. Does a child have anger? No, because they do not even know what is anger. Does a grown-up person have anger? Yes, because they know, they can differentiate between anger and peace. So it all depends on what you are observing. So if my answer to this specific question will be that the object of observing is very important, and when you are observing two things, then you are comparing this object with that object, and compare them with apples to apples, not apples to oranges, so that your comparison is correct, and then your observation will make sense.
Right, sir. If I turn my this question that I have asked just now, if I turn it in another manner and I ask you, when we see from a child perspective, so his vision is he comes with a very innocence, and for him everyone is same, and for him there is no distractions or discriminatives in terms of human beings, and with very innocence he observes everything. So, from observation from the perspective of a child, when he is observing, when a child is observing things, and at the same time, when an adult person is observing something. So, because as you say, that he has grown up with egos and other things, so his perspective, that innocence gone, that seeing everyone equally, that have gone. So, he has some very pre consumed notion in his mind, so with that he is observing everything. So like it is all we always grow for betterment, but in this sense I can say our human factor has something lost something from childhood to adulthood. We have lost many things and we should have learned from the child. Is it so, sir?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Let me explain that. Most of the time I observe that I see that the answer is in the question that they are asking, because if you see the brain of a child and if you see the brain of a grown-up person, I have had mentioned that we have what are called brain filters, and they come due to the beliefs, the past experiences, the habits, and the thoughts that we have, right? So the filters that a child has in the brain is only based on mainly on the maybe their past experiences of their past lives and things like that, which they might not even remember. So they hardly have any filters in their brain. They will not be, they'll be just a real observer, because they'll be if you ask me, a child is a detached observer, because they do not have any sort of filters in their mind. They do not filter any thing that they see. All that they see is they observe and they react. That's all. They do not do anything. They do not have the knowledge that you have to do this in a particular way. And that is where the difference comes between a child and a grown-up person. Now, as we grow, we build all these filters in our mind, and the beliefs, the thoughts, the past experiences, all these grow more and more with our our increasing those particular filters and trying to see them through those filters. So an adult person will have a number of filters in the brain, and so depending on which filter, how they are, which thought they are filtering, how their reaction will be. Whereas a child hardly has any brain filters, so they will not react or act the way a grown-up person will be. So the main reason for the difference between a child and a grown-up person are the filters that we build over a period of time. So we have to and that is why being a detached observer is very important. And my if I will just continue and try to finish what I was to say, so that people understand what I am trying to say, why we have to be a detached observer. When
Yes,
you
yes,
are a
sure.
detached observer, and that is the purpose of our one of the power of self, which is detachment. And when you are a detached observer, you observe everything that is happening, and you do not give your own personal judgment to us. So that is where your inner self comes. You are seeing and observing everything and taking the decision based on what you have seen, and not based on what you should be doing it. Because what you think you have to do is again a reaction to what you have observed. But when you observe something as a detached person, then after seeing everything, the decision is taken, and then the decision will always be the right decision. So you have to have the observance as a detached observer, and not anything that is with attachment always will lead to wrong decisions. Because attachment uh, makes you feel that you are giving the right decision, but your observance is not complete. So the bias comes into effect. And earlier question was related to bias, and your any decision that is taken with bias will never be right. So we have to develop that habit and within ourselves, that we always have to be a detached observer for everything, for every thought. Especially thoughts come in numerous numbers into our mind. Dr. Sharma always says there are about 60,000 thoughts we get, and we have to decide which one. So you have to have an object, and then you observe. Similarly, the thoughts that you come, you have to choose the thought, and then you have to observe the thought, and then observe that as a detached observer, and take the right decision based after your observation. And then when you react, you will be taking the right decision, and you will always be using your 5 sanskars and all 7 sanskars, the good ones, and then you will take the right decision. I can take more questions, but
Yes,
that's
yes.
how you can do as a detached observer, by not reacting, but by observing your thought, giving specific, being specific to a specific thought, and then taking the right decision.
Yeah, yes, sir. So, sir, as a normal human being, how can we leave attachments? We are always bounded with all attachments.
Okay. How can you? I'll tell you one thing. I had said initially that in a house, if there is somebody in pain, will you also be in pain? That is only you are sharing their pain. But by sharing someone's pain, does the other person come out of the pain? No. You have to uh, see how they come out of the pain. maybe, find out the ways of getting them the right treatment. You have to be calm in your mind. If you also get attached and you react the same way as the person who's really suffering reacts, then how will the solution come? Attachment always leads to biased decision, and that's why we always have to be detached with every act. Not necessarily being detached does not mean not having emotions. Being detached means taking a decision without being emotional. So there is a difference between being detached and being attached. You can be attached with everything, but you can observe them and you can still be a detached person and take the right decision.
Yes, sir, we understood now. Now we want to listen the importance of observation as well from you.
Okay. The importance of observing is, as I mentioned, first of all, you will be able to see things in detail. That is the main purpose. And when you observe something in detail, it is, like I said, it's an object. It could be your thought. It could be a specific, maybe you are observing a fish. I have seen someone who has done research on the bats sucking honey from the flowers, and that they went to the extent of seeing how does a bat that has a lot of hair across its nose be able to pick that specific honey out of the thing. And then after deep observation they came to with observation they were able to see that it has an elongated vessel in a nose which stretches and touches the honey and pulls it out. So, this they were able to do only when they went deeper in their observation and come to a conclusion. So similarly, if you want to be if you want to make sure that your observation is complete, you have to observe in detail, and you observe only one thing at a time, not 100 things, because when you observe even two things at one time, you have that distraction and you are unable to observe them in full and or in detail. So that's very important. Observe anything one at a time, observe them in detail and get everything. And that is where you as a detached observer will be able to get everything about that you are trying to look at. A specific object, whether it's a thought or an object or anything, you have to observe that in detail and get everything out of it. In the minutest details, in fact.
Thank you, sir. You have explained this thing in a very simple and understandable manner. So, do you think that patience is also related with observation? Somebody is observing, and if he is patient, so he has patience, he or she has patience, so it will be more useful for observation.
Okay. Patience is a trait, right? Yes, patience, if you have patience, you will be a better observer because you are not impatient when you are observing. You have definitely to have a lot of patience to be a good observer. If you do not have patience, then your attention will not be on the specific object, and then you will get distracted. To get results, patience is very, very important. So to be a good observer, patience will definitely be helpful. But just because you have patience, you will not be a very good observer. You might have patience, but you also have to have the patience to completely observe. So it's a good trait and it helps in observing.
Okay. And how much creativity is connected with observation?
creativity and observation are two different things. Creativity comes only after observation. For instance, the example that I was talking about, how the bats are able to suck the honey from a flower, was only after a research, and was made to know how they take it out, right? So if they would not have observed that, they would not have come to the conclusion that there is a creativity in that. They only know that a bat sucks honey from a flower. But how did you know how that process is happening? Creativity is only when you observe, and then you will be able to find the finer details in that, and then probably you can be more creative in doing what you want to do. So creativity is the next step after observation. Only when you observe something, then you can come to creative. Just being creative without observation may not get you the results.
Yes, sir. And also, I think observation is required in every field of life and in every career if we want to make our career a successful one. Isn't it, sir?
Observation is required for everything. I'm saying observation is for every object, every thought, everything. So, whether it is in your career, or whether it is in your education, or whether it is in your life, everything is based on how you develop that habit of observing, and always be a detached observer. Okay, train yourself to be a detached observer, because when you are a detached observer, you are not observing with any bias in mind. You are then looking at the finer details to the best possible extent, and that is when you will get the right results. So always observe everything, including, and in fact, that is one of the most important things, that as a in the power of self, you have to be a detached observer. If you get into the practice of observing everything, and then taking a decision after you have observed in full, then you will always be taking the right decision, and your power of self will increase. And so be a detached observer for every small thing that is happening, whether it is your career, your education, or anything. Every aspect of every movement that is happening, be a detached observer, and you will be the happiest and the most powerful person, because internally you are looking at everything as a detached observer.
Sir, I got to understand what you are telling about being a detached observer, and that is perfectly fine. And one should be a detached observer. But in today's life, in today's society, if somebody is becoming a detached observer, and he's taking decisions um, that is not favorable in for his family, for his near and dear ones, they will say that he or she has gone mad. So in that case, people, they cover themselves from being a detached observer. So what message you want to give to them? They want to become a detached observer, but under the pressure of family and other things, they thought that's okay, we need not to do that. A life is smooth
Sure.
like that.
Okay. Let me answer that very nicely, so that being a detached observer doesn't mean you are a mad person. You are taking a decision after observing the finest thing, and not being attached to it. So you have to understand that your decision making will always be right, because you have seen that specific scenario. For instance, you get into an accident. Okay, let's take that particular scenario, because now how do you react when an accident takes place? Do you just say, oh my God, what happened? Let me, I'm going to be now fine. I'm going to, if you act like that, what are you doing? You are reacting, and you are not present in that moment. At that point in time, what have you to do? You have to just say, okay, this thing has happened. Now, what is the next step to be done? You say, let's see whether anybody has got injured, or, have I to call the police, and how do I deal with this situation, and how do I come out of it? That is what is meant by being detached. It doesn't mean that you are a madman and then you are trying to, you will be a balanced person when you do everything with as a detached observer. And I think being balanced is one of the most important things, and every household needs at least one. You don't need all in the household to be balanced or to think like that and be a detached observer. If you have even one person in the house who's a detached observer, and that household will be very nice, because that person who's looking at everything keeps themselves calm and looks at everything and gives their right opinion, because they are observing without any bias. So my advice to everybody is, please do not think that because you are a detached observer, people will consider you as a mad person. We are not in this world for people. We are here for ourselves, and the power of self is to increase your own power. It is nothing to do with what others think, how others think. This particular discussion that we are having today is for us, for all those who are listening to this or will listen to it, that when we observe as a detached observer, it will always help us. Us means each individual. That is what I mean. And I humbly submit to all those listeners, viewers, and everyone, whether it's today, tomorrow, or whenever they watch this video, that kindly be a detached observer for yourself. And please do not worry about what others think, because when you are a detached observer, you will be taking a right decision, because you will be calm in every situation, and your decision making will always be right.
So this is a very important lesson and a message that you have given to us today. And mm, here are my questions that has ended. Now, no more questions with my side. So if I ask you to continue with the thing, or anything that you want to say, or even I want to ask you that last week we have also discussed about medical tourism, and it has been conveyed by Major Dr. Gulshan Sharma sir that a few things to be discussed on medical tourism. So from Canada. So are we sharing something today, sir, onto that also?
Uh, because Dr. Sharma is not present today, and we will need a longer time to discuss that, I would postpone it to the next week,
Sure, sir.
and then we will discuss. If you want me to go give the conclusion remarks, I would like to conclude. But if there is one last question, I don't mind taking it and then concluding. Do you have any specific question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I
Yeah.
specifically have that once person becomes detached observer. So what all changes he or she can bring in their own life and in the life of the people with which they are associated? What you have to say on to that?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. Let me tell you one, like I mentioned earlier, every household needs one detached observer. And what happens is, whenever you detach yourself from your thoughts, and you always take your decision after observing that as a detached observer, then what happens is, you will always take an unbiased and a very clear and correct decision. So when you have that as an individual, you are developing that habit and that trait of right decision making. And that first thing, it helps you. Anything that we do is first helps us. So by being a detached observer, we get into the habit of observing everything and then make a decision. So that increases your power of self. Now when you are individually having that habit, and then you develop that trait with yourself, then in the household, even if there are people who will have difficulties in various scenarios, because you will observe that as a detached observer, you will always be able to give them your impartial opinion and help them come out of that situation. So everyone seeing this particular webinar, I'm saying, please, you do your part and you will see the difference that will be in your own self as well as for your family members. And I'm requesting everybody to be the person who will be a detached observer in the family. And there we need only one, as I mentioned earlier. We don't need all of them to be. And gradually, once we are like that, they will also understand that, and they will see the difference in you, and they will also start being a detached observer.
Yes, sir. That was my last question, but one more question has come. So, with your permission, I want to consider that as the last one. So, somebody is asking that is sympathy related with observation or empathy related with observation, or both?
Is sympathy related to observation, or is empathy related to observation, or both?
Both.
Right? That's the question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. See, observing, both are, if you ask me, sympathy or empathy, both are, they come out of observing. So they are related. There is no difference between observing sympathetically or observing empathetically. Now, when you are observing something sympathetically or you are observing something empathetically, you already are attached to that particular situation. And you will not be a detached observer because you already have attached your sympathy to it. So how do you take the right decision when you are either sympathetically connected or empathetically connected? You will give your right observation only when you are detached. So, you can give that decision sympathetically after you have observed it as a detached observer. So you can definitely give your opinion and your decision after you have observed it as a detached person, and then you can give it sympathetically or empathetically.
Right, sir.
I hope I have answered that question. Whoever has asked,
yes,
you
sir.
can ask
Yes,
them.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll definitely ask the same. But you have explained us very well, and we have gained another vision on to look at our life and to be gain the power of self and to become a good human being. So thank you for that, sir. And
My pleasure.
so, as you told that with the medical tourism of Canada, we'll take it next week. So, I would like to thank you here. And with this, we'll be ending our webinar for today. With your last blessing, your last remark for this webinar for today, I would like to end this webinar. So, something you have to give a message to all the people, those who are watching us live on YouTube.
Okay. The message I have is that please work on your power of observation, because that will definitely help you increase your power of self, and your decision making will always be most of the time right, because you are giving a decision after you have observed it as a detached observer, and then giving the decision whether it is to your own self or you are giving it to others. So my message that I would like everyone to take home is kindly start working on the power of observing. And as I've been saying in the past, all the webinars, please continue to do it for your own self, because charity begins at home. That's what they say. And if you want to change, to have the change in others, first have the change in you, and the change that you bring in yourself will help you and will help everyone. Thank you very much for this good webinar. To everyone who has listened to me very patiently, I wish everyone a great week ahead, and namaskar.
So we have observed all your message, all your words very minutely and as a detached observer. And we are taking your message that we all have to improve into ourselves, and we have to gain the power of self, the power of observing. Thank you very much for giving your time to us. And we'll be meeting you next week. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Have a good day, and all the best, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.